The second year of the Hypercar class is already over, and like last year I want to go over the season race by race to judge the balance of performance. For the rest of the video I'm going to call balance of performance BOP, just wanted to clear that up as a few people were confused in previous videos. Anyway, the biggest improvement over last year was by far the new BOP parameter, in the form of the speed at which front wheel drive can be deployed for the hybrid cars, which takes away all the advantages of a hybrid system in terms of pace, apart from a few scenarios which I'll get to later. I want to clear up how the hybrid system works first, as it's ridiculous that this class has been racing for 2 years already and Martin Haven, one of the commentators, still doesn't know how the hybrid system works. This gives new fans the wrong information. For example, he said this at Bahrain.
And the reason the Alpine is getting past the hypercars here, particularly Toyota, is they can't deploy the hybrid in the slow speed corners, whereas the Alpine can deploy all its power, and so Toyota is a little bit down on power in the slower stuff.
Yes, the hypercars can't deploy their hybrid at low speed. But no, the hypercars don't have any less than full power available at low speed, as the ICE can deliver the max power set by the BOP on its own. This means that when the hybrid kicks in, the ICE turns down, as going over the max power will result in a harsh penalty. You can see it like this. The hybrid cars always have max power available, but at high speed they have 4-wheel drive, as the hybrid system sits on the front axle for LMH hybrid cars. So the new BOP parameter effectively only determines from what speed the LMH hybrid cars can use their 4-wheel drive. The hybrid system still has other benefits, of course. One being less stress on the front brakes because the regeneration slows down the front wheels too, which seems to help a lot on certain tracks. Again, I'll get back to that later. The other benefit is that you need less fuel. Even though they can't go much longer because the energy per stint is limited, the car is still lighter at the beginning of the stint. As a result of car balance issues last year, and maybe a bit as a response to the new front wheel deployment speed, Toyota switched from 310mm wide tires all round they used last year to 290s at the front and 340s at the rear. So the tire size is now the same as Glickenhaus. This made the balance of performance also a bit easier. With that out of the way, let's move to round 1, Sebring. Glickenhaus got the BOP chase they wanted after being openly unhappy about it towards the end of 2021, even mentioning it in a mid-race interview during Le Mans 2021. On top of that, Toyota needed to relearn how to set their car up after their tire size change, and this meant that Glickenhaus was actually faster for the first time. I'm primarily going to use my 0.5% ideal lap rule to judge the BOP, and that means that if the ideal lap of 2 cars from the race is within 0.5% of each other, the BOP between them is fair. The difference between the ideal laps of Glickenhaus and Toyota fell outside of that by about a tenth. Considering the fundamental changes to Toyota's car and it being a very unique track, I'm going to say it was fair between the real hypercars. I say real hypercars because I'm obviously ignoring one car that was built to different regulations that dominated on raw pace, the Alpine, which I don't want to talk too much about in this video as it won't be racing next year anyway. So my definitive answer for Sebring is fair between the real hypercars, but unfair in favor of Alpine. This race was also a good example for why you shouldn't base your judgment of BOP on the results alone. Due to the red flag, it looked like it was really close between Alpine and Toyota. And Glickenhaus would have finished ahead of Toyota if they had not shot themselves in the foot with a drive-through. And if you didn't see what happened to the second Toyota, well...
That's how easy it is, Graham.
Glickenhaus, there's the... Oh, he's off again! Oh! Oh, a huge off!
He had no steering. The front was going under the car.
Then Spa, a very different track than Sebring. It wasn't looking good for Alpine as they lost 27 horsepower after their dominance. And despite their great qualifying effort, they lacked race pace as seen in the ideal race lap, which falls out of the 0.5% rule by far. But this time Toyota and Glickenhaus were pretty much perfect on BOP. And I think I know where the extra pace from the Toyota comes from. In the half an hour the number 8 was chasing Glickenhaus, it gained huge steps on 2 places on the track, Radillon and Blanchiment. Just look at the clip going through Radillon.
Rouge to make the gap.
Well, the number 7 Toyota needs to be right there to go through it as well.
Yep. Don't worry, my time is coming. My time is coming.
Here we go, here we go. In
Don't
the
worry.
slipstream, ducks to the inside. I think this corner's going to be his. He's got to be
And this clip going through Blanchiment.
MS, the tyre pressure sensor like you have on some road cars these days, or most road cars these days, for safety, as the Toyota now of Mike Conway very close behind the gate. They've got Ferrari in the way, so I think
It is clear that Glickenhaus needed big lifts in both situations to keep on track, while Toyota could just keep it flat. And what does Toyota have in these high-speed corners that Glickenhaus doesn't? That's right, four-wheel drive. This is also pretty clear from the sector times. In Sector 2, Toyota has very little opportunity to use its four-wheel drive to get an advantage, and it's way lower. So why is it an advantage when traction is not limited? If you've ever driven Spa in sim racing, you know how unstable a car can get on the exit curb of Blanchiment and over the crest at Rédillon. Being able to get some load off the rear wheels makes the car more stable, and stable is confidence for the driver. For Spa, I'm going to say it was again fair between the real hypercars, but unfair for Alpine. It is already becoming clear which car was the problem this year, huh? It was the big 24 hours of Le Mans. Alpine initially got half the power back they had lost, and Glickenhaus brought a second car. It was clear Alpine lacked pace, and at Le Mans BOP changes throughout the weekend are possible, so they got a nice power buff before qualifying. The car was suddenly suspiciously quick, faster than the buff should have made them, and they almost qualified second. From what I understand, they had lied about their slow pace to get a better BOP, which the ACO didn't like to say the least, and they got punished hard for it. Before the race, they had the power turned down back to even lower than it was before qualifying, ruining their Le Mans. The event, it was very disappointing obviously, but this was an important sign to the rest of the teams coming next year that the ACO will be ruthless if you try to fool them. For some reason the ideal laps aren't available, so we'll use the fastest lap as it shouldn't be too far off. Toyota and Glickenhaus were very close on their fastest lap, and as expected, Alpine nowhere near. Qualifying doesn't tell the whole story, as I'm pretty sure Glickenhaus came very close to taking second at least one time, but the lap was invalidated due to track limits. But there were times in the race where Toyota were lapping 4 seconds faster. Most of it seemed to be in the Porsche curves, and again, what does Toyota have there what Glickenhaus doesn't? Four-wheel drive. On older tires and at night, the stability of the four-wheel drive seems to give the drivers a lot more confidence. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room here. Toyota has decades of experience at Le Mans. Realistically, Glickenhaus was never going to get close in race conditions. So I am happy to say that Le Mans was fair between the real hypercars as well, and unfair for Alpine. But they kind of shot themselves in the foot by trying to fool the ACO. Monza saw a new competitor join the hypercar class, Peugeot. And with it running different tire sizes than the other hypercars, came a new challenge for the BOP. They went out of bounds of the original BOP window, and gave Glickenhaus an extra 18 horsepower to play with. And Toyota only got half of that extra. Peugeot got a similar BOP to Toyota, but 8 kilos heavier and the extra power only there to match the power to weight with Toyota. Peugeot got a lower deployment speed for the four-wheel drive, which was only a response to the narrower rear tires and the wider fronts. And Alpine got some more power back due to their high-speed nature of the track. Apparently having 27 horsepower more than your nearest competitor is quite the advantage at Monza, huh? Who would have guessed? Glickenhaus had pole by more than a second, and they only had one problem for the race that the competitors didn't have: fading front brakes. And this is what I talked about at the start. The other hypercars have hybrid system to do most of the front axle braking for them, and Alpine weighed almost 100 kilos less, so it wasn't really a problem for them. Glickenhaus already needed a mid-race brake change the year before. They did their best to fix it over the winter, but the greater power this year meant arriving at corners faster. And the brakes were the only reason that Glickenhaus had lower top speed in the race. They had to lift off early not to burn the front brakes. They managed to do well and were on to win until disaster struck. Anyway, let's look at the hard numbers. Our good old 0.5% rule says fair between Toyota and Alpine, which had an amazing race-long battle. Peugeot was right on the brim of fair-unfair. but I'll give the benefit of the doubt as it was clear Peugeot was still learning, calling a test race themselves. So the BOP was unfair in favor of Glickenhaus and fair between the rest. I still don't understand how the mistake was made. Glickenhaus was right on the pace with Toyota in the other races, and at Monza Toyota had nowhere to take advantage of the four-wheel drive, so surely they could have seen this coming. Something even stranger was that even though Glickenhaus wouldn't race for the rest of the season due to financial issues, Glickenhaus was still on the BOP sheet for Fuji with no effort to slow them down. So if Glickenhaus would have raced at Fuji, they would have dominated even more as they already did at Monza, as the track would be easier on their brakes. Anyway, for Fuji, all real hypercars had some weight dropped, so this was only really a disadvantage for Alpine, as if it weren't enough, Alpine got their lowest power allocation of the season. The weight drop actually meant that if Glickenhaus would have raced, they had run lower weight than the minimum weight in the rules. They really like breaking their own rules, huh? This race was pretty boring in the hypercar class in my opinion, so let's jump straight to the numbers. The timesheets are glitched for Fuji, so I can't bring them up on the screen, but I do remember from earlier analysis that Alpine and Toyota were fair, but Peugeot got a little bit left behind. I think the Toyota dominance over Alpine at this race came from the fact that Fuji is literally Toyota's backyard. They know this place better than anyone else. So for Fuji, I'll call the BOP unfair for Peugeot. Some right moves were made for the championship finale at Bahrain. Peugeot and Alpine got some buffs, Toyota lost some power. We've been waiting for a long time to see two manufacturers share the first two rows like we saw at Bahrain. And I think it was a perfect preview of what's to come next year.
Let's go out now, finally we go green. You cannot pass before the start-finish line, but it is 5-6 wide behind the leaders. Toyota, Peugeot. Sebastian Webby controls the first turn. And
the numbers say Peugeot and Toyota were pretty much perfect if we ignore Jeff's mid-race hot lap session. Only Alpine was left behind a little bit, but still within the 0.5% rule. Their lack of performance was primarily caused by the low top speed, which made navigating traffic a lot harder. If the Peugeots had not had their stop and reset moments, I think they could have challenged for the win actually. So for the season finale, I'm going to say it was fair between the real hypercars, unfair for Alpine. It is clear that Alpine was the problem this year. The ACO got their BOP wrong 4 out of 6 times. The good thing is that the car is not racing next year. The only extremely questionable decision this year was making Glickenhaus a rocket ship at Monza, with no plans to change it for Fuji, which hopefully the ACO will have learned from. To sum up, the biggest problem will be gone next year. Glickenhaus had at least one up every race this year, so that explains their low scoring. Peugeot had both cars in every race they did this year break at least once. The only thing really worrying me for next year is that the 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive cars can change so much in pace from race to race, depending on how many high-speed corners there are on the track. There will have to be some serious race-to-race changes next year to keep everyone happy, especially because next year the grid is almost split 50-50 between the 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive cars. I'll make a video about which cars will be racing next year, their unique specs, and from which race they are expected to enter, so stay tuned for that. This was Endu-Rants, see you in the next one.